who can, yeah, introduce yourself and take it away. So Rama, thank you so much for joining us for this session on H5P Studio. Here we go.
Okay. Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me here today. So my name is Rama Kabademanin, and I am the Acting Digital Access and OER Lead at eCampus Ontario. So I'm here to give you a brief overview of H5P Studio and demonstrate some of the H5P content types. So Will has listed 4 content types that you're most interested in. So I will try my absolute best to demonstrate these types. I've also included examples of these content types that you can review later. So I'll share the slide deck that I have with Will to distribute to you as well. So before we begin, I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. Although we are meeting in a virtual platform today, I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on, and personally where I join you today from the city of Burlington. The city of Burlington is part of the Treaty Lands, and the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit is also rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nation and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, this territory is also mutually covered by the Dishwa Wampum covenant. I think I hear my echo. And if you have your own, I think someone is muted. I'm not sure, Will, if you can find. Okay. And if you have your own land acknowledgement you would like to share, feel free to put it in the chat. Okay, so we'll get started. So there is a lot to learn about H5P and creating and or using H5P content types, but today I'm going to go through very quickly over what is H5P, H5P Studio, and how to create an account. And then I'll show you how to create or reuse H5P content using specific H5P content type as example. And then finally, how to share your interactive activities with others. So I know that one of your colleagues, Andrea, has put together a great introductory video about H5P. So I implore you to check it out if you haven't. She does a really wonderful job of laying out the basic. But for the next few slides, I'll go over them quickly, but I'm also happy to answer any questions that you may have. So the eCampus Ontario H5P Studio uses the H5P plugin to provide Ontario educators with a one-stop shop to create, share, and discover interactive learning objects. But what exactly is H5P? So H5P is a plugin that allows you to create, share, and reuse HTML5 content for any web browser. In order to use H5P content and application, you either need to have a website like WordPress or Drupal, or a learning management system like Moodle, Brightspace, or Canvas that have enabled and added the H5P plugin. Or you can use H5P content and application through a paid service account on h5p.com. So there are different ways that you can use the H5P plugin. The Studio is just one of the ways that you can use it for free. So I generally discuss why we like H5P, but I'll skip over that section today, only to mention that H5P plugin offers over 40+ content types, and each content type has an example and a tutorial to help you get started. So this is just one of the reasons why we actually do like H5P, is that it has one of the largest variety of interactive activities that you can create. The H5P Studio was developed by the team at Wilfrid Laurier University Library as part of their own projects that they were working on. It uses the H5P open source plugin to provide a one-stop shop for our member institutions who want to create interactive content for their courses or for other instructional projects. And this one-stop shop includes the ability to for you to discover H5P content that can be used or modified for your teaching. You can create new H5P modules to use in your teaching, or you can share your modules with students, with others, and through our catalog. What's unique about eCampus Ontario H5P Studio is this catalog of H5P activities. So not only can you create activities for free, but you can search and find one to reuse or modify in the catalog, or even share your own activity as well. Okay, so I'll demonstrate very quickly how to create an account and what the user interface looks like. So feel free to create an account right now if you haven't already done so. I'll put the URL for the link in the chat. One moment. So on the H5P website, so if we go to the main website, if we click on register on the upper right menu corner, it'll take us to the registration form. So the registration is instant. So it's based on your email address. So anyone at University of Toronto can get an account instantly. So once you complete the information here, you'll get a confirmation email just to confirm your account, and then it'll take you to your your dashboard. So I'm just going to sign in to give you a quick preview of what your dashboard looks like. So depending on whether it's your first time or you've actually created an account before and have created content, your user dashboard looks pretty simple like this. There is about 4 different categories. So you have my content, content result, my contribution, and my favorites. Content is everything that you've created yourself. So it'll be displayed here. You're able to sort through, you're able to sort them by title or last updated. Your content result is anyone who's registered and has signed in, who's taking your content or your activity will show up here. So this is still under development, but as of now, I believe it'll show you the last 3 or 4 users who's actually taking your interactive quiz. And then my contribution is if you've collaborated with someone else on a content, this is where it will show up if you're not the original author. And then my favorite is any interactive activity that you've seen through the catalog, you can favorite them, and this is where they will show up here. So I'll go back to the slide. Okay, so I know I went through that very fast and very quickly because I want to get to the good part, which is the actually creating interactive activity. But does anyone have any questions so far about H5P, H5P Studio, the catalog, or how to create an account? Okay, so I'll move on to the next slide, but feel free to drop your questions in the chat if anything comes up. Oh, I think I see one question. Okay, so the question is, could you clarify content results again? Is that other users accessing the activities I have developed? That's a great question. So the content result is any activity that you create that has a participatory element to it. So like question set or branching question, this is where it would show up. So the person does have to be registered and sign in order for it to actually show up in your content result. So this is where the result will actually show up. So then if we click on all results, we'll be able to see that this person, who it was taken by, how many points they got, and then the maximum points, and then when it was completed. So it's just very basic element stuff here. If you were creating something where you wanted to track anyone who's actually interacted with your activity. But it is important to know that they do have to be registered and sign in H5P in order for you to track their interaction. Okay, any other questions? Perfect. Okay, I'll move on. So let's see. So I see one more question. It says, if there are several team members working on the project, some of whom may only be with a group for a few months, is it wise and possible to have a single account? So generally for us, our recommendation and best practice is to actually have everyone have their own individual account. So that means then so if you have 5 people working on your team, you want to have everyone register and create their own account. You can add them to the content in the collaboration feature, which when I do one of the demo, I'll show you how to add other members. The reason for doing that is that if one member leaves or is no longer with the group or institution, the content is still there, right? Because in order to actually delete the actual activity, it has to come from whoever is the original creator that created the content itself. So it's always better to have everyone have their own account as opposed to having a single account that multiple people access. You're also able to track the contribution that others are making to the content as well. I hope that answers your question. Okay. So once you've created your account, you can start creating or reusing H5P content. Essentially, there are two main ways to create an H5P content. You can either create a new content or you can reuse a content as long as the license permits it. But before creating your content, you should check to see if your content type is accessible. So h5p.org has compiled a table of content available, and for each element, they've indicated if the content type is accessible, if it's being maintained by its core team, and if the content type has any known browser limitation. So it's a good idea to review this table to ensure that you're selecting a content type with your end user in mind. So, for example, the four content type that I'll be demonstrating today, 3 out of the 4 content types are accessible. So timeline is not accessible. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't actually use timeline. All it means is that you have to consider who your users are and whether or not you're going to have to recreate the timeline in a different format in order to make it accessible, right? So that's always something I like to remind people is that whenever you see that in H5P content is not accessible, it shouldn't stop you, but it should make you pause and consider other avenues and ways that you can recreate the interactive activity in a format that is accessible, or select a different content type altogether if you don't want to duplicate the work. So before I start demonstrating, I'm going to just go over quickly sort of the general common feature, no matter whether, excuse me, no matter whether you're creating your content or which content type you select, or if you're reusing a content. So for each content that you create, you're required to add some basic details such as the descriptive title, subject, and the subject vocabulary is under, I'm going to call it under construction. So we're currently updating our subject vocabulary, but description, your language, and any keywords that you want to add that may not be captured by the control vocabulary. And this is what the collaborate feature looks like. So again, if you're working with multiple users or multiple people from different groups and even from different institutions, you can find them here, and then you can add the collaborators here. So you can add as many fields as you need to based on the number of people from your institution. And again, H5P is open to our 48 institutions, so you can work with someone else from a different institution. So it doesn't just have to be from someone from UofT. And then content visibility. So this is where you want to select how you want to save your work. So you have 3 options of identifying that your work is in progress. This is also for if you are currently working on a draft stage, this is what you want to make sure that you click so that it's basically an indicator that your work is still in progress, right? So you can decide whether you want to show your work in the catalog or not. And this here is a very interesting element that people select, because I believe currently we have about over 4,000 interactive activities in the catalog, but in actuality, we have over 10,000 H5P activities that are created, but only a fraction of them are actually showing in the catalog, right? Because people are creating interactive activities for different reasons, and not every one of them that they create, they actually want to display and show up in the catalog. So that is a user preference, whether you want to make your content visible in the catalog or not. The other feature is you can select whether you want to show it in your profile. So each account will have a profile. So if you go to my account, you click on my profile. So all of the interactive content that you create, you can decide whether you want them to show it in your profile or not. You can also add an image. You can add, your social media links as well, so that others can connect with you if they need to. So as of now, I've only actually selected one interactive activity to show in my profile. And of course, you want to add metadata. So for both, you want to add metadata details, but also you want to make sure that you select a license. So our default license type is undisclosed. Undisclosed just means that whoever is creating the content hasn't actually selected a license for it. And that's all it means. So it could be for different reasons. Because you can reuse interactive activity, so you may not necessarily be the copyright holder of a particular activity, but you have the permission to distribute and reuse that content. So sometimes people will reuse a content and just leave the license type as undisclosed. So if you come across a interactive activity in the catalog that you want to reuse, but the licensing is undisclosed, you can connect and contact the author. So you just want to make sure that you actually connect with the creator first, just to make sure that you're understanding whether or not you're able to reuse that content. Okay, and another feature that you want to consider is enabling sharing permission. So this is where you want to decide whether or not you want the reuse button to show up, the rights of use. So again, any metadata element that you enter about the copyright permission will show up under rights of use. And this is where folks will know if they can reuse your content, if so, under what conditions. And then the embed feature. And these are all preferences. So these are things that you can disable, or you can enable some of them, or all of them. Okay, so now I'm going to move into the demo portion. So, I think I see one question. Let's see. So the question is, if I make an activity on my personal account and add my team members as collaborators, do they have the ability to edit the activity? Additionally, can they access the activity through their own personal account, like their own dashboard? The answer is yes to both. So if I add a collaborator to my activity, so under your account, so when you go to your dashboard is divided into two categories for your content. So you have my content. So you, as the original creator of the H5P activity, it will show up under here. For any collaborators that you add, it will show up under my contribution feature. And yes, you'll see that you have the ability to edit the interactive activity. So if I click on edit, it'll open up and it'll allow me to actually edit the activity. I should mention that no two people can be editing the activity at the same time. So it is one of those sites where only one person can edit at a time. So that's something important to distinguish, because otherwise what's going to happen is if I have the window open here and another person have it open in a different browser, when I try to save the activity, it will pop up a message and it won't be able to save the addition I've made. So that is something that you want to keep in mind and perhaps coordinate with your group member in terms of when someone will be editing the activity versus when someone is not. I hope that answers your question. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. Okay, so as I mentioned, one of the reasons why we like H5P content is its variety. So you can select from over 44 different types of H5P content. Each content type provides a tutorial and example to help you get started. So the first demo I'm going to do is basically creating content. So if you were actually creating content, your own content from scratch. So I'm going to use the interactive video as an example. And just for the sake of time, I'll move somewhat quickly, not go over all of the feature, just because I can spend a whole hour showing you how to do the interactive video. But the best advice I can give for if you're new to H5P or you're new to creating interactive activity, there are different tips and tricks that you can do. So the first one I always say is look at the catalog and take a look at other interactive activities that you want to try and see if you can reuse them. If you can reuse them, reuse it just so you can get a sense of what it looks like from the back end. So for this one, let me show you. So we're going to go click on create. So this is what the editing H5P editor interface look like. So you'll see the sort of that brief description features I went through that no matter what interactive activity you're creating will have. So these are the information that you have to provide and make a decision on. And then you can search for your content type. So we're going to do interactive video, which I know is very popular. So it's right here. So you can either click on it or you can also click on details, which will tell you more information about the content type. So if we click on it, it'll automatically pre-populate the editing interface for that interactive activities. So we'll see that the the interactive video looks somewhat like that. If you have had a chance to sort of play around and try to create your own, you'll notice that most of the editing interface are similar and they kind of have the same vibe and feel to them. So I think once you try one or two interactive activity, you'll become a little bit more comfortable in terms of the editing interface and what it looks like. The other thing is that each of them tend to sort of have directions as well. So I always say follow the directions, follow the steps, and that would definitely make it a lot easier. So one of the first things we want to do is add our title, of course. So I'm going to use a H5P introductory video that I actually have. So we're going to call it, actually, let's call it introduction. Yes, the introduction right now. H5P. Studio. So then next thing, very important, we want to add the metadata. This tends to be sort of hidden, and I think that's why sometimes some folks don't see it, but it's usually next to the title. And this is where you get to change your license. So we're going to just say this is CC BY, and then you can type in the author's name and so forth. So this is another section where if you were reusing a content, this will be pre-populated already with that person's information. So we can say save. So the first step we're going to do is add a video. For the interactive video, you have the option of uploading video file or embedding the file. We generally recommend embedding the video if you can, but if you upload a video file, then you want to make sure that you provide alternative formats, right? So MP4 will work and is generally commonly acceptable, but you want to make sure you provide a web format so that if someone is on a browser that's not supporting MP4, it'll still be able to play. You can also provide a high definition quality as well. So you can provide up to, I believe, 3 different types of video type for your activity. So I'm going to use a YouTube video because embedding is always a lot easier. So what you do is you just paste the link, and then we're going to click on insert. Okay, so this is a part where nothing actually happens. Sometimes you click insert and you're like, where did the video go? But it actually did add it. So if we go to step 2, we'll be able to actually see the video there. So I'm going to go to step 1. And I always mention that because sometimes I do get questions about it where people are like, oh, I added the link, but nothing happened. And then I'm just like, oh, you just have to go to step 2. It doesn't do anything dramatic to let you know that, oh, the link went through or the video got uploaded fine. So then on the step 1, when you're uploading or embedding your video, you also have additional options. So you can add a title for this interactive video. I generally tend to leave this blank unless I'm creating multiple interactive video type within a larger H5P content type. So you can add a poster image. Poster image does not work for YouTube, but this is, for example, if you are uploading your own video. So let's say maybe you're working on a topic that or a subject that may be a little bit more on the sensitive side, or maybe the image may be triggering for some. So you can add things like poster where the video doesn't play right away, and it maybe just has a poster, and the poster can be whatever you want it to be. So this is a feature that's here if you need to add that additional feature. And then you have text track. So this is, again, if you have subtitles that you need to add, it's not supported for YouTube video, but this is where you would add it. So now we can go to step 2. Okay, give me a second. So I see one question in the chat. Here, I'll get through this demo and then I can go ahead and answer your question in the chat. Okay, so to add your interactive activity, so essentially the tricky part about interactive video is knowing your timestamp. And this is one of those sections where you're going to have to go back multiple times to kind of figure out where you want the interactive activity to start and where you want it to end, right? But essentially, you can start playing the video.
eCampus Ontario H5P Studio
and then
leverages
we can pause. So you can pause exactly, let's say, for example, I want to add some type of element here. So these are the options that are available. So as you can see, there's quite a bit. We can add, let's say, a text. So let's say we want to add a welcoming text. So any element that you click on, it will open up another window so you can actually work on that interactive activity. The other feature is that I like is that you can also copy certain interactive elements from other content and paste it here as well. So right now, what we want to do is the timestamp. So this is where when I've created interactive video, I bring out paper and pen and write the timestamp down just so I can keep track of where I started and where exactly I want my activity to end. So right now we've stopped here, so we can change the timestamp to say, I want this text to be displayed let's say 3 seconds into it until maybe 5 seconds, just a little bit. The other thing you can do is you can decide whether you want to pause the video altogether so that the activity will show up and the person has no choice but to click on it. And then when you pause the video, do you want it to display as a button? So the button does require action on the user versus a poster. So a poster will show up automatically. So this is something that you can decide depending on what content type, what element type you're adding. So for example, for this one, I want to say, I want to give the person the option to click on it or to skip ahead. So then this is where you can add the text. So it's just a simple editing text box. So I'll just say, welcome to the or something like that. And then, yeah, there's not much sort of editing or text font in H5P. So if you've had a chance to actually create an interactive activity, then you'll know that the text element is very simple. But this is essentially what the, if we want to add a text, this is what it would look like. So we can say done. So we'll see that here, there's a new element added as this plus sign, as opposed to a poster that will just pop up automatically. So then we can keep playing.
Powerful open source H5P
and then you can skip ahead.
The Wilfrid Laurier Library.
Okay, so we can skip ahead, and again, so anywhere in the video itself, you can go ahead and add your element feature. So you have multiple choices, quizzes. So I won't go through all of them, but I'll show you some of the unique features that are handy to know about. So for example, we have crossroads. So crossroad is handy where if you, for example, want to add directional to your video, right? So let's say, for example, we want to give people the option to do something. So where would you go next? So we can say, and again, this is based on like what video you have, what content type you're selecting, but this is sort of that directional thing that you can give someone to make the decision on. So then we can say the question is, where would you like to go next? So we can say, so the choice text for one can be, let's say, launch date, for example, because I know it talks about when H5P Studio was launched. And this is where we want to add the timestamp. So I believe I made note of the timestamp so we don't have to sit through and go through. Actually, let's do collaboration. And then it's 0. So it wants it in milliseconds. So seconds, milliseconds, and then minutes. And then if chosen, then we can say you can add an optional text if you want. So I'll show you what this looks like. And again, you can add multiple choices for the choice. So we can say launch date. I'm just going to add random timestamp because I can't remember what the other one was. So let's say done. And this is what it looks like. And you can add this crossroad at any part of the video. So if you wanted to, you can add it in the beginning of the video where maybe as a start, you want to give people the option or you want to ask them a question and for them to make a decision. Or you can add it here or anywhere. But this is essentially how you create that decision element making. Another feature is the navigation hotspot. And this one is really just more so if there's a particular sort of image or something on the video that you want to highlight, then you can use the navigation hotspot for that. Another neat feature is bookmark. So bookmark is if you want to add different section that allows people to jump around, this is how you would do it. So you would just click on the little bookmark icon, and then you go add, and then you can type in the title. So we can say launch date. Generally, I've seen people using this for interactive elements. So let's say, for example, you've created your video and you've added different questions throughout the video. So then sometimes people will actually create a bookmark and use a bookmark for the question so that if you wanted to, you can skip ahead to different questions. So we have one here, and then we can add another. So again, whenever you want to add that bookmark, you just go, you click on the bookmark icon, it will stamp the time here. So then we can go add, and then we can say collaboration, and then so forth. So then let's save this so we can see what it looks like. So now I just have to type in my info and say, oops. We'll just pick something randomly. I generally stick with reference. So again, if I have collaborators, I'll add myself. So you can start searching for users and they'll show up here. And again, you can add another user if you need to. So we'll save this as work in progress. And then, oh, I forgot, the next step is summary. So summary is basically anything that you want to summarize at the end. So we can, reiterate things like eCampus. I'll just put and again, you can add multiple statements that you need to, different ranges, you can display them. And then I'll just say save, just so we can see what it looks like. Okay, so while that's saving, I'm going to go ahead and then just read the question in the chat. And feel free to pose any question that you have or anything you want me to redo, or I can get through the next demos. And then at the end, we built in time for questions as well. So the question is, will the other person working on the activity get notification that another person is working on it? Unfortunately, not in H5P Studio. So it will tell you, it only tells you when you actually try to save, which is a bummer. So we are working on sort of trying to create a notification. So I know that if you have experience using Pressbook, then you'll know that in Pressbook, when you actually click on a chapter that someone else is working on, it will tell you that this person is working on it, take control. So that is a feature or enhancement, I call it, that we have on our list of things that we want to definitely improve for H5P Studio as more and more people are using it and as more people are collaborating on activities. Okay, so I see another question. So it said, to upload a video, what's the size limit on this H5P Studio? I guess the size limit is determined by the settings on the Laurier server. It seems like I can't upload a video which is bigger than 700 MB. So there is a limit, and I believe it's 500 MB, but don't quote me on that. I know I have it written somewhere, and I know I'm supposed to update our getting started page for the thing. So there is a limit. So actually it may be bigger than that because the limit is based on Drupal. So we use Drupal, which definitely has a larger upload maximum limit than Pressbook does, or WordPress in general does. But I know that for the most part, we've only ever had one instance where someone was uploading a video that was quite large. And this is why we generally always say, whenever you can embed. So that's always a better avenue about going about it, is embedding your video as opposed to uploading a video. But I will confirm the maximum size. So I'll just make a note of that. And I'll add it in the slide deck before I email Will the slide deck. So that way it's in there. Okay, so our activity has been saved. So this is what it looks like. So if we click on play,
eCampus Ontario
I'm going to mute so we don't hear it. But essentially, There you go. So because I've decided to pause the video, you'll notice that it was playing and it stopped automatically. So this is a feature where if you don't want it to pause, you can actually just leave it on pause so that it'll keep going. But then that means the person has to be paying attention and actually clicking on it. And this is a intentional thing that you can do. So if you're actually trying to make sure your end user are engaging with the video, you can actually leave it so that it doesn't pause, because you want them to be able to actually click and see the plus sign. So if we click on that, we'll see the welcoming sign. And this is just the welcoming sign. And again, we can keep playing, and then we can actually move ahead to the next element. So this is where our crossroads that we added. So then if we click on, let's say, launch date, it should automatically take us to the launch date. And then if we click on collaboration, it should take us to collaboration, which I believe was the same page I was on. And then if we click on bookmarks, so here we'll see the bookmarks that I've created. So then we have collaboration, and then again, we have launch date. So again, if you want, and again, this is something that you can add at the beginning as well. So, you know, you can make note of the bookmarks, or you can add that navigational option, sorry, the crossroad option at the beginning. So if you have a particularly long video and you want people to make the decision to go into different section, you can do that at the onset. And I believe the open summary at the end. So this is just my little summary saying H5P Studio was launched in 2020. And again, so all of the sort of extra metadata elements I've added will be here. So I've actually allowed the ability for you to download or copy the H5P. You can also disable the copy feature as well, and the download feature, and then rights of use. And you just want to make sure that whatever rights of use licensing you select for your content, it actually correlates to the ability that of others to be able to reuse your content. Because I know sometimes people will put CC BY, but then they'll disable the ability to download the H5P content. So that's something I always remind folks about, is just keeping that in mind. And if you wanted to use this content, let's say, for example, on, you know, if you have a press book that you're working on, or a different site that has H5P plugin enabled. So this is where you can copy the iframe. You also have the advanced sort of different sizing if you wanted to. And if your LMS system has enabled H5P plugin to the, I believe, a third-party feature, then you can also copy this iframe and embed it there as well. Okay, so here, and then of course, I have excellent, really great examples that are way better than the ones that I've done. So I know that Mastering the Torah, this is a great one that I know that was done at York University. So right away, you see that bookmark feature showing up. This video is about 6 minutes. And then again, you can see all of that sort of little mark. Sorry, I'll just turn this off. So, you know, just different marks. So there's different ways to create it. And I implore you to check out the examples and just take a look at the catalog and see how others have used it. I know that this is one that I've created, but what I actually did was added in an interactive book. And I believe it's somewhere here. Is it? No, maybe the next page. See, even I don't remember where I've added. I think it's, oh no, it's here. Okay, now I remember. It's licensing game. So again, so this one doesn't have a volume, but you'll see that I've created different slides of videos where each one there's a question. So it's actually testing your knowledge on the page and testing your knowledge of licensing. And this is where you see that you have interactive video as a H5P content on its own, but you also have it where it shows up in other larger H5P content type. So, you know, getting the hang of it is really just practice. So the more you play with it, the more you look at others, the more familiar you become with how to actually create your own. Okay, so any questions about creating new content, the process, before I move on to our next demo, which is how to reuse H5P content? Okay, so yeah, if you have any questions, you can put in the chat. So again, I'll go through quickly as I said, like going through one content type is quite large, but essentially another way that you can create content is to reuse a content. So you can reuse, you can download a content or you can copy it when it's enabled. But before you do, you just want to make sure you check that rights of use again. So making sure that you're using something where the licensing permits that you either reuse it or you have the ability to actually modify and adapt it. So the demo I'm going to do is timeline. Timeline, again, because it's not accessible, is one of those that is not that popular. So if you do search for timeline in the catalog, you won't see too many that's actually in the catalog, but I know that there are quite a bit in that's actually created in H5P Studio. But we're going to reuse this. So for this one, I won't go into too much detail, but I'll just show you sort of like how you reuse a content. So if you click on reuse, we're going to copy this content. And then if we go back to, I'm just going to close these. So if we go back to create, this time, the neat feature about reusing a content is that you don't have to select one from the list. So you can just go paste. So when you copy something, you'll see that the paste button will be enabled. So we're going to click on paste, and then it'll automatically copy everything over. So everything I've done from the back end. And this is sort of that recommendation I was making, is that if you see your interactive content, you're not sure how it works or how to do it, copy one that you can actually reuse over here. So then by doing that, it makes it a lot easier. So you get to see sort of from the back end of how everything is put together. So then here we have sort of the heading. So I'm going to close, So we have the header here, and then if we go down, we start to see the date. The timeline is actually one of the fairly easier interactive activity to use. Like it's pretty straightforward in terms of how to create and how things will look. There's not much sort of customization that you can do to it, but you'll see that this is all the dates that I've entered. And if I wanted to add a new date, we can go here, add, and then we can say the start date, we want it to be 2022 because the last one was 2021. And then end date, we can say 2024. And then we can type a headline for it. So the headline can be test, and then so forth. And again, so this is where, the asset is sort of like, what do you want the asset to be? So if you have a media that you want to add, you can add it here, and the thumbnail. So I'll show you what that looks like, and then any credits and caption that you want to add. And this is where the body of your entry would be. So this is actually where you enter that detail in here. Yeah. So then I'm going to save it. So here, I'm not going to save it because then I have to enter all of this information, but I'll go back and then we can see what that looks like. So again, this is sort of that beginning page. And then if we go through, you'll see that all of the dates are also at the bottom. So I can actually move this and go through the timeline and then so forth. And then the content that I've entered is here. Okay. So I see a lot of chats here. Okay, so I will read that comment after, so I know that time is going, so I'll go through the next demo quickly. So again, I've included examples that you can look at to sort of see how the timeline works. So the next one I know that Will had mentioned that you were interested in is documentation tool. I will admit I haven't had a chance to actually play around with a documentation tool, but I know that it is on my list of interactive activities to try out. But essentially, if you want to create sort of an assessment tool type or goal-driven type of activity, this is what you can use for. And this is one of those activities that, your end user can actually provide an input, and then that input they can export later on, I believe, into Word document, and then they can actually submit that. So I'll show you an example of one. So this one is the actual demo itself from h5p.org that it comes with. But essentially, this is what it would look like. So again, it's sort of that assessment feature where, you can type in different questionnaire, have different text in the front, and then allow your user to provide the input. They can go through the different section. And I'll show you what it looks like from the back end. So then if we click on edit, So from an editing interface, this is what it looks like. So every page you add here is considered an element. And then you can decide what kind of page you want to have. So we saw that the first page was pretty much basic. So that's just the standard page, right? But then you have the goal page, goals assessment, and documentation page. So then we can take a look at goals and then see what a goal page looks like. So again, and these are titles that you can change, by the way. So this is just more, you can change the titles. You can add your description here. And then you can indicate sort of any additional features that you want your users to be able to add. And then when you're done, you can add, and this is sort of the document export page. So this is where you actually will have to indicate sort of the beginning of your assessment and then the end where you want to sort of wrap everything up, summarize it, and then allow the user to export that document. And this is what it would look like. So I'll show you another example because I know the other example that I have is actually a lot better. So this is one that is reflection on unit or course learning. So this is one of the ways I've seen others using it. So again, this is one of those where you won't see a lot in the catalog because it's very personalized, but I know that a lot of the documentation tool actually exists in the backend that is not visible in the catalog. So this is, and I've seen it being used mainly for sort of end of course reflection or assessment type. And again, so, you know, just adding new strategy, allowing the ability for your user to input different things. So things like that. And then I think this one is, again, so if you wanted to create a process where, you know, you want your users to submit a proposal, it will go through like that. Okay, so I'll go through the last one, which is the virtual tour. So the virtual tour is actually one of my favorite H5P content. So I've created this morning, and I can say it is one of those features that it looks intimidating because I know I've seen some pretty amazing one, but once you actually start playing with it and try to create your own, you actually realize it's one of the fairly easier one. What you really just have to do is set out a map what the direction you want it to be, right? So knowing like what images you're using and how you want the images to flow is really the most difficult part. So that's the part where I spend the most time with trying to figure out, okay, this is picture 1 and then picture 2 and then picture 3, but putting it together is actually fairly simple. So I will show you. So I'll show you what what it looks like from the front end, and then I'll quickly go to the editing interface and just show you what it looks like from the back end. So you'll see the navigational pull. You have the option of either making the image static or making it 360 so that, you know, you can actually move around. So for this one, I've made it static. So if we click on the navigational pull, so this one, you'll see that it's 360. And you'll also see my image is actually poor quality, so it was not meant for a high definition 360 image. So then we can move around and take a look at Versailles Garden, and then we can go back. It's a little bit Vivian. And that's the thing with sort of this. So you really want to map it out because sometimes your users can get lost. So I know that the other examples I've actually seen people adding multiple sort of navigational directions so that if someone get lost, they can still find their way back. There is a little back button here that sometimes just it gets like really lost. You can barely see it. But if you click on here again, so this is going to take us to inside the garden. So again, this content type is really more about planning the activity than anything. So it's more like you'll spend more time just planning it and trying to figure out how you want to put it together than the actual content type. So from the back end, the editing interface, this is what it looks like. So you have, again, that same standard thing where you have to enter your title, the metadata, and then this is where you can add your sort of scene or images, but it's called scene. So then you would just go add new scene. And then you can decide whether it's a 360 image or static. Again, 360 is the one that you can move around. Static is just a simple image. And then you have your title. You can add, so if you click on add scene background, this is where you select your image. I'm just going to say cancel. And then you can also decide whether you want it to be an arrow or more information, right? So, and that's where you can add things like text. So for example, if I click on more information, it'll allow me to actually add text features. So maybe I want to provide some details about the history of Versailles Garden or something like that. So we can go remove, switch from, and then once you've added multiple scenes, you'll see that all of them will show up here. And then you'll have things like current view, so then right side view. So again, this is more on your path of sort of like directing and sort of making sure that you have all your images organized. So then if I click here, so this is that navigational tool. So if you want to add navigation, like go to the scene, then you just click on it, it'll open it up, and then it'll ask you where would you like it to go. So you can add a label if you want, or you can leave it blank. So then this is where I can say, if you get here, I want you to go to the, let's say, right side view again, or you can add a new scene, which is a new image. We can say done. Oh, let's say 2 and then done. Oh, what did I miss? Okay, so it's not letting me save because I know I forgot something, but that's okay. So we'll go back. So you can actually add audio as well. You can add extra images and then text. So this is again where if you want to add that informational aspect to it, so you want to provide details, this is where you'll be able to do it. Confirm. So I'm going to go back and then let's see. So the example, so again, we have a lot of this in the backend, but unfortunately not in the studio. So I know that, sorry, not in the catalog. I know there's only a few there, but I implore you to take a look at the ones that we do have available. So you can see that, you know, this is way more sophisticated than mine in terms of direction, having a outcome, and then again, having that directional sort of arrow, right? Like this is way more actually developed than the one that I did. So things like, you know, providing that.
Students are aware that
Adding that extra video. So you can really play with this and develop it to be what you need it to be. And this is where I always say, download it, copy it, take a look at it from the back end and see how it was put together. Because that's really the only way you'll get to become familiar with H5P and how the different content type work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, so I think we're pretty much close to out of time. So I think I'll just pause there. The next slide that I have is really just more about like how to share, which is, you know, you can link to or direct your users to your content page or profile. You can use the embed feature, which I've shown you. You can download and upload H5P into different pages. You can embed in your LMS and so forth. So I'll pause it there and just open up the floor for questions while I try to read the chat.
Actually, you don't. Thanks, Rama. You don't need to read the chat. I would just put a few extra little pieces in there and thanking you. So, so really, yeah. If there are any other questions, we can skip to that. Again, Rama, thank you so much. Or here, sorry. Let me pause this. But thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording.